On today's show, Jason Kidd was right. I'm going to tell you what that was and the keys to Game 5 on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks.
Mavericks, NBA champions. It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show. Making Locked On Mavs your first listen today. Best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day on any podcast platform, like the video on YouTube, and comment anything below. Let me know. Give me one key for the Mavs to win Game 5. Let me know. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. That's $150. Win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And joining me from 105.3 The Fan, the Get Right, which is what the Mavericks need to do. What you got for me, Reggie Adetula?
Hey, man. Shouts out to all the fine folks that came and said hi to my guy, Nick Angstadt, and, of course, myself at Friday's game, Sunday's game, and also, oddly, after Sunday's game, I got to say hi to a Raccoon Squad member named DJ Trey. So, like, just all sorts of people saying what's up to the kid. I appreciate y'all for locking on with my guy, Nick.
And shout out to Reggie for every time someone comes over and says, hey, can we take a picture? I make Reggie take it.
That's right. That's right.
It's really funny.
What that
and then they
means
go, oh,
is,
let's take a picture with you too.
and that's the thing is,
As soon as they notice, it's so funny to me.
I think I'm getting a feel on if they're like, I feel an obligation to take a picture because you're here, or if they're like, oh, I really need this picture, right? But either way, one thing you're going to get, 17 photos of Nick Angstadt, because I'm going to press that button repeatedly.
Got to take multiples of it because you know
right.
that the first one is probably going to be blurry or smudgy or something.
That's right.
You know,
so hopefully there's a good
that.
one in there, everybody.
The etiquette of taking a photo for someone else with their phone, that is an art that, you know, people in the past, they didn't have to do that.
No, they did not.
Maybe a digital camera. I don't know. Today's episode, we'll talk about the keys to Game 5, what the Mavericks need to do to fix some of their mistakes. I've got a list of Mavericks, like, mistakes and things to fix and issues. I guess issues is the best word for it. And all that. We'll talk about Luka's health as well and an update from him on practice. And then we'll talk about how much Jason Kidd should get some blame for the 2 losses the Mavericks have so far. And in those same kind of terms, I'm going to start here, Reggie.
Okay.
Jason Kidd was right.
Ooh.
Now, there's a segment of fans that at least comment on YouTube and say, you're so gutless. Why would you why are you not talking about Jason Kidd and saying how bad he's been this series and talk about why he's the reason why are you scared? Are you scared of Jason? Are you scared of this? If you're doing that now, you were not here like a month ago when I said he should be fired and let go from the team. So you're new here. So for those of you that are in that camp, and for those of you that are also in the camp of why do you always blame Jason Kidd for everything that happens to this team? It's not all his fault, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna throw you guys a bone here for a second. I think he's right. I think Jason Kidd is right in the sense that he has made a calculated decision for the Mavericks and the Mavericks defense specifically to sell out on those Clippers threes, and especially James Harden's threes late, and to allow him to take some of those floaters. Now, the Mavericks defense didn't execute very well at the end of Game 4, and that's one of the reasons why they lost. Many reasons. But I think the main reason why they lost is the Clippers hit 18 threes. They shot 62% from 3. And they have hit 18 threes in both of their wins in the series so far. And there's only been 5 teams this season, or 5 games when a team has hit 18 or more threes in the playoffs so far. The Clippers twice, Milwaukee in one of their wins, Boston in one of their wins, Miami in their one win against Boston.
So hitting teams that many shots.
Teams are 5-0 when they hit 18 or more threes. Teams are also 16-0 when they hit 14 or more threes, including the Mavericks win that they got, I think, in game 2. And so I think Jason Kidd is right to sell out on these threes because it's such a big swing part of this series.
Absolutely. I mean, the very basis of this is the math of it, right? Just the 3 being an outsized scoring potential, and knowing that this is one of the better 3-point shooting teams in this league. I'm absolutely with you there, especially when you consider the ways in which, man, James Harden himself is kind of a swing vote. If you were going to take an electoral bent on this, I don't know why I did, but I did. This is where we are.
As 2 days in a row, this podcast has made it a political analogy. Then we never do that.
That's right. You're welcome. But no, I mean, you know that someone like Norm Powell, high level 3-point shooter, both in percentage and volume. Paul George knocks down a lot of shots at high volume, right? James Harden ends up being one of those guys where this could go one way or the other. And when he's knocking down shots, it almost feels like a death knell. So I absolutely understand the idea of playing high on him. What made it tough, though, was like they were hunting Luka Doncic, and then Luka then had a limited mobility when you talk about a myriad of things. The short turnaround, clearly the injury, the fouls, right? All those things put him in a place where it made it a lot more difficult for him to execute. But it did seem like, and I'm with you there, I think the game plan there of trying to stop the threes matter a lot more, especially when you look at the idea of, okay, well, James Harden getting into the paint isn't any better, twos, threes, but also if he's getting to the paint. And as you've mentioned before, they were not scoring at the rim. The Clippers have not scored at the rim particularly well all series. And you were forcing him in kind of that mid-range area to put up floaters. Floaters, mind you, that he had only shot something like 21% or at less than 30% on during the course of the season. Problem was you just got a crazy high percentage of knocking down those floaters in this game, and that one put you out at the end. So it made the decision, although the process I think was pretty good, as you have mentioned there, it put you in a place where it ended up looking bad.
Yeah, I just think that it's the key to the Clippers. If you try to think about it from the Clippers side of things, how do they come up with wins? So far, they've hit 18 threes in both of their wins, and they won both of those games. They hit 10 threes, 10 of 29, which is 35%. Not like awful, but not good.
Yeah.
10 of 29 in that loss. And then they hit 8 of 30, which is just terrible, 26%. They're not going to shoot that bad again, but 8 of 30 in that game. So you literally, so far, if you're just going to go off of these 4 games, you hold them to 10 threes or less, the Mavericks win. If you hold them, or if they hit 18 or more or anywhere close to that, the Clippers win. That's their way to win. They are the Mavericks from like 4 months ago.
Yeah, they kind of are.
Without Kawhi Leonard, they are. I mean, that's the type of team that they have to turn into, is they have to bomb threes, play the math game, and they have to win it in that sense. And so I think Jason Kidd is right to sell out on some of these threes. And as dumb as it looked, I mean, it did. If you're just watching the game and go, Luka's just letting him go right by him. Why are they? And then PJ did the same thing. PJ, I think one of the best defenders on the team. Probably the best like perimeter defender on the team. Derek Jones Jr. maybe has a case for that too, but PJ just let him go right by him too, because it's sort of designed that you just sell out on that three so he doesn't take those step back threes. The other thing is the Mavericks offense is not good enough to like overcome a multiple three barrage and then go score on the other end and match them. It's just not the way they're set up anymore. And
I imagine we'll talk more about that because we're not playing. You're not trading threes for twos, and right now, the Mavericks 3-point percentage is not nearly as good as the Clippers. One thing I do want to ask you, Nick, do you think that, because one of the things that was the same in game 1 and game 4, you could see the Clippers getting to the corners, which is a weakness in this Mavericks defense when they play it as they typically like to, making sure that guys don't get into the paint and those types of things. How confident do you feel in this defense from the Mavericks being able to kind of take away the corners from the Clippers? Because I think that ends up being an interesting thing. And the ways that I felt like they were able to do that in games 2 and 3 were really getting into Harden or whoever the ball handler was and kind of limiting that pass from getting there, as opposed to just kind of like, I don't know, fronting that guy in the corner or what have you, and not letting the ball get there by playing the gap. It felt like more not letting that pass to exist to get the ball to the corner was how they got rid of the corners.
Yeah, we've seen the Mavericks like just help off of that corner three and allow them to get that pass and allow that player, whether it's Terrence Mann or Westbrook as many times as he wants, or maybe not Norman Powell as much, and we've seen them do that. But yeah, you look at so they're winning game 1, 12% of their shots were from corner 3. They're winning game 4, 12% of their shots were from the corner 3. There's actually 17% of their shots from the corners in game 3 that the Clippers lost. That was kind of interesting. But in game 2, it was only 7% of their shots were from corner 3. So they like the amount of corner threes is definitely a big factor. And then but in game 3, when they took a ton of corner threes, they didn't hit any of them. And so that's the key, is like Can you deny that, or can you just like force them to take the worst version of their threes? They're gonna get them up. Like they're not the Phoenix Suns where Frank Vogel's gonna go to you and be like, hey, can y'all take 43s? And Devin Booker and them are like, nah, bro. We're gonna take 26 in a game. They're gonna take their threes and they're gonna get them up. The thing is, can you make them take the worst versions of that? And so that's why I think that, Kid is right to sell out on the best version of the threes for the Clippers and to try and force them into tougher shots. And man, the floater was just working for James Harden, and the Mavericks' help defense was just not there. And there are many other issues. And so coming up, let's get into some of those issues. How can the Mavericks address some of these? James Harden not hitting threes, their slow starts. We'll get into all that and more coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. You know that Mother's Day is coming up, and you know that you got to get something for your mother. My mother lives in a different state, and yours may too. And so you know that you got to get her something. And maybe you don't have if you don't have the sibling that still lives in the city where your parents live, where they can go, like you send them money and then they go and get something, make DoorDash your good sibling that still lives there that can help you get something. If your mom has a sweet tooth, if she's a tech enthusiast, a beauty connoisseur, it doesn't have to be just a meal with DoorDash anymore. It's not just what it is. You can shop savings that would make her proud. You get a DoorDash membership, a Dash Pass membership, and so you'll be able to get that $0 delivery fee and reduce service fees on eligible orders from Dash Pass that meet the minimum subtotal. Other fees apply, terms apply to that as well, but you can get that. So order now and get everything you need for Mother's Day on DoorDash. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now on DoorDash. Use that promo code LOCKEDONNBA using the order on DoorDash today. Terms apply. That code is LOCKEDONNBA. Also, I want to tell you about FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook has all kinds of props and odds that you can use to get in on the action. Use that code LOCKEDON. Go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. You get $150 win or lose on your bet. You don't have to just win it. Isn't that wild? Go check out and see what they have. They actually have the Mavericks, a 3-point favorite on the road for Game 5. I found that very interesting. The Mavericks are still a favorite, even though the comment sections and the Twitter verses and everything else, all the message boards are doom and gloom for the Mavericks. Mavs are still a favorite in that game, so you can check that out. And then check out the series. The Mavs are still the favorite in the series as well. They're minus 188 for the series, and the Clippers are plus 152. So check that out on FanDuel. Again, go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is, huh? Anybody?
Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. If you want to support the show, text us, get text alerts from us on Mavs rumors, Mavs news. I give an update. I give game notes throughout the game and all that stuff. Subscribe to the subtext. Click the link in the description. Text the number to subscribe to subtext. I got the number on the screen right there, and I got the number in the description as well. And yeah, the more that you do stuff like this, the more cool things I can do. I watch a quarter with you every game, and we can go through all that. But yeah, subscribe to subtext. I love that community that we've built over there. All right, Reggie. Mavs have some issues. We talked about the Clippers bombing threes. We talked about how Jason Kidd is right about bombing threes. I want to play Jason Kidd. He had a quote today about what they're going to do with those threes and about like selling out on those threes and letting Harden take that floater and do that, because Jason Kidd said it, and now he's doubling down on it, basically.
Coach, after last game, you said threes killed us, which was true for sure. When James Harden is just going to the floater consistently over and over in the fourth quarter, is that something you're prepared to just keep living with and keep trying to take away the three, or there'll be an adjustment there?
Yeah, we're going to live with that. Threes hurt you or can beat you. Twos in this league don't beat you. Gives you an opportunity. We just got to make it tougher on him with the twos. We can't just lay or give him free layups. He's too good. So we have to do a better job on the ball with him.
And that's the thing about what you said earlier. He's doubling down on it. I'm surprised he actually answered that question.
Yeah.
And said, hey, we're going to keep doing this. We're going to keep selling out on this. And but he's right. They have to also be better on the back end of it, and better on the ball, and better catching up to him and recovering, and better with the help defense and all that. Like all those little intricacies of their strategy need to be better. But he's doubling down on the strategy. We're going to see it again probably in Game 5. Or he's completely lying to us.
Subterfuge.
I don't know the drop anymore. I don't always tell you guys the truth.
Yeah, that was also the big thing for me. The immediate takeaway was like, oh, he's gonna say that out loud. Not even the day before the game, the day before the game, right? He's letting us know that that's the way that they're gonna play it. And I'm with you. We've preliminarily discussed it, but yeah, no, it does feel like that basic idea makes sense. The process of that makes sense. I think what made it tough is, for one, your point of attack was lackluster to say the least, right? It was Olay, as we mentioned, right up top, and so you need to make that a little bit, make him do a little bit more work. And prior, you had a big that was meeting him, and I think the added element that the Clippers have added over the last couple of games is that baseline cut for that dunk that made that funneling a lot more difficult, because now your big can't just step up and trap Harden to where he has someone in front of him and then you had someone behind him kind of contesting from behind, because what he would do then is float it up and let the likes of like Mason Plumlee or whoever dunk, and that's the most literally the best shot in the game that you could get. I think that made it tough. If you peel in from the corners, you take that away, but then you open up the corner three again. And so I think that ends up being the dilemma that they have. But ultimately, if you go through all those permutations, making James Harden take the floater seems like the best way of going about it. So I hear you. I think really where it starts is, one, Luka Doncic being a little bit further down in whatever we can view as a recovery, not having foul troubles, because especially if he's going to be hunted. But whoever is at that point of attack has to make it harder for Harden, while also still sitting on that step back. Like that, it just becomes a lot more responsibility there. And maybe you peel off a pass away to make that just a little bit less appealing. Maybe but it definitely has to be that point of attack that shifts. I don't know how much you can change on the back end because that floater goes up.
That's the big problem. It's the big problem the Mavericks are facing, especially playing a Clippers team without Kawhi Leonard, where their offense becomes more difficult to guard for the Mavericks. Let's get into some other issues that the Mavericks have. The Mavericks, in their losses, have not been hitting threes necessarily. Now, they have one win where they went 9 of 35 and shot 26% from three and won the game.
Incredible shooting.
But the Mavs also had a game where they hit 14 out of 33, and then they won that game.
Yeah.
And so the thing is the Mavericks not hitting threes, is that an issue, or is it just Luka?
It's tough. I think that if you were just giving me those two, I'd lean more towards Luka, right? But knocking down threes is important if you can get it to where you are changing the way the defense plays. I think that's really where it's important. We've seen this with Dante Exum over the course of the season. Dante Exum knocked down 50% of his threes. Like, objectively, if you're just looking at the numbers, solid 3-point shooter on low volume. Has that changed the way a single team has played Dante Exum, right? Has that shifted the way the defense works? I think that's really what becomes important. If they're knocking down shots to the point where the team, in this instance, the Clippers are forced to have to, contain those guys, or to where you're now knocking down more shots than them, cool. I think the question then becomes, do you trust the others, as we like to call them in this circumstance, right? Derrick Jones Jr., PJ Washington, of course, but Exum, Green, whoever those guys are that are playing, do you trust them to knock down enough shots to either outshoot the Clippers or put the Clippers in a bind where they're going to choose that you can't allow that to happen? And as of right now, I don't know that that's the case. So it feels weird to say, like, I would love them to knock down shots. I don't know that that's what's going to change the larger trajectory of this game in this series. But I guess you can also come to the point of a lot of these games have been close, and knocking down a couple of shots from deep is the few points that you'll need to change this. So obviously you want them to shoot better. But if you're giving me between that and Luka Doncic being more on his run, I'm going more for Luka Doncic every time.
The thing is, the answer to the Mavericks not necessarily hitting threes is literally just Luka's 3-point shooting. Because he's the one hitting, shooting at volume. He's averaging 12.3 threes per game, and the Mavericks are averaging 33, 34 threes a game. He's almost shooting half of I guess he's shooting a third of their threes. Yeah. Basically, a third of their threes. He hits 2 more. That completely changes the Mavericks trajectory. He hits 3 more and goes 6. I guess it would be 6 of 12. But if he hits 2 more, that's 5 of 12. That's a good percentage, and that's kind of the percentage he was shooting during the regular season when we saw him hitting really well. 2 more threes if Luka hits. That's literally what we're talking about. Sometimes these margins, the difference between 26% and 40% is wild to me. That is the swing. That is what we're talking about. And so I think the 3-point problem boils down to Luka and Luka's efficiency, which is, I guess, another issue the Mavericks have. Luka practiced. He was able to participate in everything in practice. He had I don't know if you saw the crazy tape that he had on his leg to try and, keep it in place and all that kind of stuff. Brian Suterer said that maybe mostly for show. that tape, he doesn't seem like he's a very big believer in the crazy spider athletic tape. But yeah, go check out his stuff. He's got a lot of good stuff on his YouTube channel and Twitter as well. But yeah, it comes down to Luka, and I think that 3-point issue that we've talked about and that we've highlighted is literally just Luka not being as efficient as he had been before when the Mavericks were winning games.
Yeah, and it almost feels wild to have to ask that of Luka Doncic, who, I mean, for years and years and years has been, piling in a lot. But this is what we talk about in the league, right? You get to the playoffs, and this is the stars' time to shine. They have to live up to what they typically do. And unfortunately for Luka, or fortunately, however you choose to view it, what he typically does is a gargantuan amount, and that's what you need. Absolutely what you need.
Just ask him to be himself.
Yeah.
Not like, hey, you got to hit 50% of your threes. Hey, you got to hit 5 more threes in a game. You got to be you got to shoot what Paul George did or James Harden. They don't even ask him to do that. Just hit a couple more and be yourself. Shoot the way that you did before. And I think that's where Luka's frustration is coming from too. Where we got the quote the other day after Game 4. I don't feel like I'm pulling my weight. That kind of sentiment where I need to help Kyrie more. I need to be there for him. That kind of thing.
Well, we can actually turn that around a little bit. I do think that Kyrie's got to help him more. And you've talked about this. We were talking about this during the course of, I think it was Sunday's game, where Kyrie starting his shift earlier in, as we have gotten to the work metaphor very much with these games. We're used to him clocking in late second quarter into the third quarter and really taking over. And in that first half, just kind of allowing things, just things to come to him. He, gets his in the course of the game. But if Luka Doncic is struggling in the way that he was, clock in earlier, right? I think that the benefit of Kyrie is that he's a player that absolutely can run the offense and he can get all sorts of different things. But you shoulder the load early, and if he comes back around, which you anticipate Luka will, we can switch the order of these things. It doesn't have to go exactly the same way every time. You just have to make sure that you do what's necessary to win.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of the issue with slow starts. So coming up, let's talk about some of the slow starts, and let's talk about how much blame should Jason Kidd get for the 2 losses the Mavericks have. Classic. We'll talk about that coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Got to admit, I got a competitive side, and I like to win, and I like to dunk all over my friends with games and things like that, and you can do that with Monopoly. You can team up with your friends for time tournaments where you work together, you build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. So you can play together or you can play against them. You get unique stickers that you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. You can get cool new playing pieces to travel on your boards with. I guess you're not just limited to the hat and the thimble and the train and whatever else. Get emojis to taunt your friends and smash their buildings and all kinds of stuff like that. You can heist their vaults, which is fun. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges, unique things that you can use in their mini games and all that kind of stuff. So there's always new timed events that will help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. Go check out Monopoly Go, the App Store or Google Play. Again, download Monopoly Go in the Google Play or the App Store. All right, Reggie. Kind of touched on the slow start thing. This is another one of the issues that I did want to get to.
Yeah.
With the Mavericks and how to fix is their slow starts, and I think it does kind of fall on Kyrie. If Luka is not going to be, Luka had been the slow start, he had been the one that had held them back from, or that had made sure that they didn't start slow, because he always comes out in the first quarter and gets his, right?
Yeah.
And in this series so far, it just has not necessarily been there for him. I mean, you look in first quarters, Luka is averaging 8 points a game, which is it's fine for Luka, but I think he was at 10 or 11 or 12 or something like that in the regular season. I mean, that's when he shines. He comes out and he sets the tone and does all that. If Luka is not that, is it just Kyrie? Because you mentioned that before, that he's the one that should clock in a little earlier. Is it literally just Kyrie if Luka doesn't have it, and then see what happens? Because I think there could be another option, and that's what they got in game 2, where they or game 3, where they just went to Gafford over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And tried to get started well that way.
I think that's fair, absolutely. But in my mind, I guess I keep thinking of it. We use this word all the time, the heliocentric nature of this offense, right? It's around the ball handler, and Luka Doncic is typically that. It feels like you just hand that over to Kyrie in some instances, and you can do similar things, although not exactly the same. They are, unique in some ways, and I don't want to, discredit that or forget that. But, even if you're going to Daniel Gafford, one of the things that we saw, Kyrie is more than capable of putting that lob up there, of running that as well. And we have not seen that nearly as much. And us not seeing that, the Clippers have also not seen that nearly as much. And so one of the things about this is a chess match. You got to give folks different looks as well, both offensively and defensively. So I think that it would be a lot more on Kyrie, because we know this offense is largely predicated on those two scoring and then everybody else eating off of them.
Yeah, you kind of just only have certain options with your offense and the way that it's set up. It's like Luka attacks, Kyrie attacks, you try the pick and roll, you spray out to shooters, and like the shooters thing hasn't really played out that well for the Mavericks with this version of the roster. It's like, all right, you're running out of options there.
Right. And there are offensive, kind of sets, I guess, for lack of a better term, that include both of them, where we've seen them kind of run an action, send it to the other guy, run an action. And I think that's also going to be important too. Like, make the Clippers defend the full court and look in more than one way. Right. And I think that also hopefully would help, one, get Kyrie more involved early, but two, make the Clippers do more work, as they did, especially in Game 4 to Luka Doncic and some other isolated folks on your team, made them work on the defensive end, made them a little less effective on the offensive end. I think you can do that to them as well.
Okay, it's that time. You're a radio professional. I'm just a podcaster that is just on the internet, and sometimes I go on the radio at times with you or with the Defunct The Freak. Shout out to Ben and Skin. And or others. We're gonna do a classic radio segment.
I disagree.
How much blame should Jason Kidd get for the Mavs' 2 losses?
I'm maybe not the right person to ask, because I'm very much process. I kind of like
how's the process been.
I think the process has been fairly good. Especially if the big thing of late is that, late game situation where you have James Harden cooking you on these floaters. We talked about that. Like, I think the process on that has been good. I've liked some of the adjustments that have been made as well. A la, like, hey, you saw, was that Game 2 with bigs guarding James Harden on the perimeter, where now when he, gets inside, he has somebody on his back that's contesting from behind with a lot of length. Like, I've seen the shifts that have happened in this. And so I've tried to give Jason Kidd a lot more credit in this. And you're going up against a team that knocking down shots. When they do that, they do it at a high clip. And I've seen over the course of these 4 games, I've seen them do a good job of limiting that. We just talked about that as well. I don't know that I'm in the place where I'm ready to bury Jason Kidd on his coaching in this. I'm actually largely okay with this. Now, this gets more difficult as we go along, because more and more adjustments are necessary. And I'm interested to see what he has on top of that, because I've seen good ones early. I want to see more as we continue along. This is where I think I'm judging him.
I started this show literally by saying Jason Kidd was right. Now I'm going to give him some blame, because I do think that there should be blame. He's not blameless in this, and no one so far has been blameless. We talked about Kyrie, slow starts, talked about Luka, inefficiency, and they both have done things that have given the Mavericks 2 wins and have kept the Mavericks in this series for sure. This is not like there's only blame or there's only credit to be given at this point, right? But I think Jason Kidd does deserve some blame for that Game 1. They just, when Kawhi was not going to play and they knew it, that team came out and did not look like they were ready to play a non-Kawhi Clippers team. And then again in Game 4, the same thing, where that actually you did not know the status of Kawhi Leonard, but you know that it was going to be up in the air, and you knew that it was going to be all over the place. And so as a coach, that's your job, is to get the team ready. You can put it on star players, you can put it on leadership on the court, you can do all that kind of stuff, but it is your job as the head coach to get that team ready to play and to be ready for those for those kind of looks. And that team just did not look ready. And yes, maybe some of the process was good. Jason Kidd mentioned, somebody asked him today about how do you stop the slow starts that the Mavericks have had. And he's like, well, we just hope that the bunnies go in. It's like, man, I don't know. I was thinking if you just hope that some layups and a couple of little shots here and there go in, and that's what you're just banking on. You're just going to flip a coin with it. I don't know. He's not going to tell us his strategy and anything. Like
Yeah.
that. He's absolutely not, unless we're asking him about the James Harden stuff.
That's right. Oddly enough.
Apparently, that's the only thing he's going to tell us about. But I do think he deserves some blame in this, for sure.
Yeah, there is something fair to point about. Like,
the team just was not ready to play in that game one without, and I think that that's something that that we can look back on and be like, well, they weren't ready in those moments, and I think Kidd deserves some blame. I think he's done good things. I gave him credit at the beginning of this for making the right call at the end of game 4. But if there is credit to be given and there's blame in some of the losses, Jason Kidd deserves some of it.
Yeah, it's tough to parse some of this because Jason Kidd's, as I like to call it, poor bedside manner kind of obscures some of it. He will upset us with the way that he disseminates information.
That he also was asked by Mike Leslie from WFAA. He said, How do you coach Luka through this downtime where he is, struggling with his shooting and he's struggling with injury and all that? And Jason Kidd just goes, "Oh yeah, I just tell him move on to game 5." Come on, man.
Yeah.
Suck it up and move on.
Yeah, that makes it really tough. But yeah, no, I think what we've seen. And maybe this needs more examination from me. I'm willing to acknowledge that. I think what we've seen, a lot of this has been when the Clippers have gone to certain things, they have found the things that I think have been weak points with your Mavericks and been able to take advantage of them, particularly when they get to pick and roll and the ways that they're able to move around. And I think that you found decent adjustments for the most part. And that's why you've seen comebacks. You've seen them. And all right, this is one of the places where I'll actually lob some blame because I feel weird.
There it is. I got it out of him.
All right, here we go.
I got it out of him.
In game 4, when it instantly, very quickly looks like game 1, one of the things I thought is you learned a lot of how to combat some of the things that you saw in game 1. How early do they apply some of those things? And it did not feel like they applied them immediately in a way that's like, oh, this is the same thing that we've seen before. We have an answer for this. It's one of the things that like someone like the Golden State Warriors for the last 5 years, we've seen them do because they've seen so much. They can immediately go to the back when they're like, we've seen this before. What do we have in our institutional knowledge that we did for that? That's what makes great teams over time. And it felt like you didn't have that immediacy in the way that came back. I'll give them blame there, but largely I think the process has been good.
There it is. Let me know in the comment section what your keys to game 5 are. This is a big swing game. Absolutely big swing game. Slightly and I will be back for that game. We'll break it down. We'll talk all about it. And then on Thursday night, Dana Larson will be back and we'll talk about where the Mavericks are, whether they're down 3-2 or they're up 3-2. That is a massive game, game 5. So keep subscribing to the show. Keep listening and subscribe to the subtext. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked on Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom!